Hey everyone, it's Minx here, and Luetin is joining me for another episode of MLD.
Hi guys, today we're going to be talking about hype in gaming and game releases. Hype is a big thing now. It's been, well, I mean, that's kind of like the definition of hype in itself, but it's just been expanding more and more and more in our sort of digital age. We have, every time a game comes out, there are huge campaigns that are pushing it more and more. And as games become, the gaming industry becomes bigger, more expensive, bigger AAA games, just everything is just more. But we are seeing more and more of these very large titles which have actually failed. There have been many recently which have kind of bombed despite having expansive hype campaigns. What does hype mean to you, Minx, when you're thinking about these big games?
I'm thinking about people getting overexcited about something they know nothing about, usually is my definition of hype.
Yeah.
I find that hype is usually misled, even when I am occasionally suckered in by it. I feel it usually leads to massive disappointment, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I asked about it on Twitter today with my followers, and that was pretty much the consensus there as well. Hype creates too big of an expectation, which just sets you up for a fall. I can think of multiple games. One of the biggest, notably, would probably be Titanfall. Titanfall was quite a recent game, and whilst it's still popular, it definitely didn't hit the marks that I think a lot of people expected. It definitely didn't have the longevity that a lot of people expected with that game. One of my favourite quotes looking back was IGN saying, "Believe the hype," which was hilariously untrue. But it just kind of goes to show that, it's all about selling. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. All games have got to have marketing. Everybody has their own sort of work that they do off of games. When you especially look at journalism and stuff like this, they're going to be talking about these things. But at the same time, you kind of have to read between the lines. And I think what I worry about is that a lot of people seem to not do this so much. I think gamers are very intelligent, and I think they often make very good choices. But at the same time, there does seem to be the case that people just get caught up in it too much, and especially when you think about things like pre-orders. But, Minx, do you think it's an overall a bad thing for gaming to have all of this hype?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because hype allows like the media to talk about stuff and keeps people talking about the hobby and brings up topics of conversation for the hobby and things to look forward to. And I guess that creates a general air of positivity within the industry. But once something, if something is hyped up and then it's a total disaster, that obviously everything brings everything crashing down. There's lots of drama, lots of negativity. So it's a very hard thing to say. I'm not even really sure what the answer is in my head. I mean, I don't like the sort of the media created hype, and I don't believe in pre-ordering things and stuff like that. I don't really think it's a good idea. But at the same time, if it didn't exist, would games just like peter out a bit in some instances? I don't know.
Yeah, I think what you see a lot of the time is that an initial title maybe doesn't have so much hype, when it's coming out for the first time. Maybe they're not too sure about how well it's going to do. But if a game becomes very successful, suddenly they're like, damn, onto a winner here. But they realise that they have to do more and more to sell that game. And that's where the hype comes in, because they're drumming it off. They're running off of the titles that came before it to push the next one. And the other thing is, I think with hype, you don't get it with the initial game because they don't necessarily want to sell too much of that. If you look at something like, for example, Alien Isolation, they did hype quite well with that game. And I've sort of said this a few times, that I was really impressed with how they handled Alien Isolation, because they built up people's excitement for the game without highlighting too much and without giving people too much expectation. And I think that's the key. They got people excited for the game, but without spoiling it or without gaining people too much, so that they would think like, we're going to have this and this and this and this and this. And then when it actually comes to the game, you're like, oh, they don't really have that, and it's not at all what they sold it on. They didn't do that. They just got people anticipating the game. And I think that's a big difference to make,
Yeah, I guess I feel that. I mean, I guess I didn't like Alien Isolation in the end, but that wasn't because of a lack of hype. Yeah, I thought the stealth was badly done. It was the insta-death thing was too frustrating.
Yeah.
I don't have the patience or time to replay large sections of game the way it was designed. But that is, I understand that's perhaps about aiming at a different market to me. Like, I just don't have the time to put into difficulty in games these days. So anything, if this sounds awful and off topic, but if I die in a game, I'll often just stop and then I probably won't touch it again.
Really? Wow.
I just don't have the patience to play stuff again and again and again.
Yeah.
I play on casual difficulty usually and just want things to go smoothly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think that, like I say, though, it's mainly about expectation with hype, and you tend to only get it in sequels, so I don't think it's such an issue with that. But I think also gamers, like I've said as well, can sometimes be their own worst enemy. You know, people want loads of new stuff when they see a sequel, you know, and if the developers just do what they've done before, that's not enough, because people kind of are like, oh, it's just the same. So marketing for these secondary games have to be very aware of the fact that people have these kind of attitudes, and so they try to rise it up, push it up, push it up, push it up. And that's the problem, because often the games don't change a great deal, because the developers are scared that if they change things too much, it's going to sort of alienate the community. But if they don't change it enough, people hate it. So the hype is that kind of buffer. You know, it's like the buffer to sales, where they're sort of saying like, hey, we're going to have all this, and look at this, and look at this, and look at this. But then in reality, it's not going to be greatly different, and people should realize that. But then that's what happens with the expectation. People get so caught up in it, and then when the game actually comes out, they realize, hey, it's quite similar to the previous game with some new things added. I think that's really where it falls flat. But do you think it's gotten worse? I think it's really a question to ask. Do you think in the last, say, 12 months it's become worse? Because I think there's this proliferation and this transition to YouTube. You know, YouTubers are supporting games much more directly than they were previously. EA has its Ronku program, which everyone is aware of now, where they are sort of basically sponsoring YouTube producers to create videos coming forward. It's all part of the hype marketing campaign, but they're not the only ones that are doing it. There's a lot of other developers that have deals with people, be it Ubisoft, be it Square, be it any of those companies, and people like Warner Brothers as well. So there's a lot of people, all these AAAs, that are sort of pushing this forward. Do you think that's a problem, and that we're, like I say, within the last 12 months, it's become so much more severe?
A very difficult question to ask, because obviously I am responsible for making videos that are paid promotional videos from some of the companies that you've listed there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
obviously that is
I include myself in that as well, guys, just to be aware for any of you that don't know, because obviously I have a lot to do with Battlefield, and as a lot of the Battlefield YouTube producers, we do stuff with EA. So I am also caught into this. So don't feel like I'm pinning Minx on the spot, because I kind of am, but I'm kind of not as well. Go on, Minx.
I wouldn't say I think it's a bad thing. I think if people are excited about something, it can help them get geared up for it and look forward to it more and even enjoy it more. Like if you're like, oh, just I can't wait for this game, but you play it and it's great and it's fantastic and it's really satisfying, then it's amazing.
Yeah.
And the problem lies when people see all this hype, whether it's on YouTube or on journalism websites or on even a TV commercial or whatever. They see it, they get hyped up, and then it's a complete letdown because the quality of the product doesn't follow through.
Yes.
I mean, one thing I will say is I don't do promotional stuff on things that I think are bad products. So I always feel that the things that I am promoting are worthwhile. From my personal perspective. Obviously, that's just my personal perspective, and someone else might not like the game, for example.
Yeah.
But I tend to play stuff where I feel the hype, for me at least, is worthwhile, as it were.
I think as well is that a lot of the time YouTube producers, now I don't do this for my full-time career, but a lot of people do. And the thing is that when you're doing a full-time career, you need to make money for yourself in certain ways. But at the same time, you can do that without compromising yourself. And I think that's really the key thing to note. The trouble is then that there are companies always, and I'm not talking about large producers, developers. I think it does tend to be because they're not going to run the risk of having a scandal. So it does tend to be kind of smaller groups which are trying to proliferate these kind of shadier deals and so on and so on. And then of course you will similarly get producers who will tack into these kind of things because they either think that nobody's going to know or they don't want to sort of highlight it. Again, there's a fairly large, some producers, and I'm not talking about anybody that I have worked with, just to make that clear as well, but there are people that we know of that have had deals and they just don't make them public, and that's not a good thing at all. And
it's actually illegal, I'm pretty sure, to do that.
It is. It is. And also, I'm not talking about anything recent either. This is, past, but basically, those kind of things are not good. But the problem is when those things get picked up on, people are like, well, that's what it's all like. And then everybody gets tarred with the same brush and it suddenly becomes this hugely negative thing. But it's not a negative thing overall.
I mean, like, for example, I did a bunch of Dragon Age videos recently for EA.
Yeah,
I
me too.
love
Yeah.
Dragon Age. It's like my favorite game of perhaps like the last 3 to 4 years. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I haven't finished it yet because I've played like 60 hours so far, and I love it. And yeah, I mean, it was a great bonus to get paid to play it, obviously, but at the same time, I would have played it anyway because
Yes.
it's literally one of the best things I played in ages, and it's well worthy of the hype that I felt was. To be fair, actually, I don't think there was that big a hype for that game anyway, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well that we're just seeing longer campaigns of hype as well. Because in the past, I think it used to be, and I think this is very much something that people can read into, was that in the past you'd see maybe a campaign like a month before a game was released, but now it's much more like almost from announcement through to completion, all the way along. It's just this campaign, this campaign, this campaign. And I think, again, that's just the world we live in now, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because, like I say, with social media and the digital age that we are in, it's just going to be the case. People want to find out stuff. People want to know. They want to know. They want to know. Just look at movies or anything. It doesn't have to be just gaming. As soon as a movie is announced, up until it's released, it's like teasers, little bits of information, screenshots, interviews with people, little bits and pieces. Everyone's just, it's that little chicken feed. People just want like little bits, and it just kind of maintains people's interest all the way along. But as I say, I it's a difficult one. I think it really is, and trying to say, is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? It's not as simple as that. And like I've said before, with many things, it's never as black and white as that. You need to sort of look between there and sort of say, well, look, within a certain situation, it's going to be better. In some situations, it's not going to be better. And I think it really depends. And the responsibility lies a lot of the time with, the marketing departments of these companies. If they push it too hard, they can end up damaging themselves. And that's obviously a really bad thing. Do you think gamers are, guilty, Minx, of proliferating too much hype as well? This kind of sort of overexciting each other. Imagine almost like a party of kids where they all sort of are feeding off each other's energy until they all get so excited they can't contain themselves anymore.
I mean,
I feel like it's a bit like that sometimes.
I think gamers can be like that, especially if it's a franchise where you've been a fan of a previous episode or sorry, a previous installment, and you want it to be better this time around. You're like, yeah, it's gonna be better. I mean, I've already put down $100 on the special limited edition pre-order with a I don't know, a leather jacket or something. I think that was a Resident Evil 6 thing, actually, a leather jacket. But you know what I mean, like, because if it's an established franchise in particular, other gamers are very much responsible for hyping other people up because they almost want to. People want to delude themselves it's going to be good without knowing it's going to be good because they want something they enjoy and they feel they've already invested money in the franchise if they bought previous installments too.
Yeah.
It's almost like console loyalty as well. Like, well, I bought a PlayStation 3, so I have to buy a PlayStation 4 and fuck Xbox.
Yeah.
It's shit. Fuck it. And,
that was the
you know
worst.
What I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the sort of like mentality a lot of people have, and I feel that does almost come into the same mentality when we're dealing with hype and things like that. That is the mentality that people have, and it's an issue.
I think as well with the consoles is actually a really great example. Thinking back to sort of when those were announced with the E3 and all this kind of stuff. When that was announced, the Xbox, for example, was, they were really pushing that so hard. But again, both of the consoles, both of the major companies, both Sony and Microsoft, they were kind of keeping their cards to their chest for a long time because it was sort of a case of like, who's going to play first, who's going to announce it first. And then once they do, bam, it's full on auto machines. There's no stopping it because once they put it down, that's it. They've got to go. And it was very much like that. And then it just hypes and hypes and hypes and hypes. But the problem was that, again, by the time you actually get to that release time, it can be almost too over the top. And I think actually, again, there was a lot of cases. Obviously, there was some very specific issues with both Microsoft and Sony in terms of their deals, the kind of whether people could play games from previous consoles and all this kind of stuff. And that classic one. But loads of other issues. Was the Xbox going to be just a media center rather than a gaming machine? And all these kind of things came in. And again, it's all part and parcel of sort of marketing campaigns, how they're approaching it differently. But some people end up disappointed because people were kind of anticipating creating something more.
Can I say something about console launches actually in hype here?
Yeah,
Because
do.
this is very on topic. I feel that every single console launch of all time has been a fucking disaster when it comes to delivering on the hype that they've built.
So much.
Every single time.
Yes.
Everyone's like, I can't wait to play it. I can't wait to play it. And then the launch like 3 month games are usually bollocks. I mean, there's like one must play title, and then like four ones that get like 6 out of 10 and 5 out of 10 on review sites. And you're like, well, I was looking forward to that, and now it's shit. And like every console has done it. Let's take the PlayStation 4 for example. I mean, I have a PlayStation 4 now, and I'm very happy with it. But I would certainly say for the first 6 months of its lifespan, there was like 2 games worth owning total on the fucking system, and the rest of the time it was like, why did you own one? I don't understand how it outsold the Xbox One, because at least that had a few exclusives that were worth playing to begin with. And even the Xbox One didn't have a great lineup either. It had Brown Dead Rising and a fucking Titanfall, which wasn't really an exclusive anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you have looking back at like earlier console launches and things like that. I mean, the N64 I guess had Super Mario 64, which was a must own, but it also had tons of shit, tons and tons and tons of just drivel that was released on the N64, like completely. And the PlayStation 1 and 2 had such vast libraries of total trash that. You know what I mean? Like every single console launch is not delivered in terms of being able to have good games to come out with the console. They've obviously got good games over time, and I'm not saying any of these consoles are bad because I like them all, but it took the launch period is always a letdown. Always.
I think the Wii had the longest launch period of any console ever,
God, yeah.
where basically the game that everyone played for the first 10 months was Wii Sports, and that's it. Like, you know, really, that was the most amazing console release ever, I think, where they were literally, I mean, Wii Sports is basically just almost the kind of, I don't even understand why that was a disc. It should have just been almost built into the system, you know, because it was such a sort of small game, and yet somehow people were buying Wiis just for Wii Sports. You know, I know many people, like I say, who are not really gamers, who ended up buying Wiis just for Wii Sports, and then never would buy another game. And I'm just like, this is insanity. Like, I can't think of any other console where that's ever happened, where people have bought it for like the sort of, you know, default OS system app, and then nothing more. Like,
it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, I mean. And the thing is that every time there's a new console, we delude ourselves into thinking it's going to be... And we should know, especially if you're as old as me and you, you should know that these launches are going to absolutely fucking suck. No. But everyone does it. Everyone just like, yeah, I would pre-order that PlayStation 4. I mean, it's got one game.
Look at it.
I mean, I probably won't be able to play anything else for 8 months, but still, you know, great, brilliant. You know, and everyone does it. I guess I didn't do it, and I don't usually buy into a console early on because I guess I'm cynical and horrible. But the vast majority of gamers are deluded, and I hate to say this, but literally, if you bought a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One in the first 6 months, you were probably pretty deluded by the hype, because it definitely was not worth owning either of them. And you could argue that it really isn't that worth owning an Xbox One still anyway, with like 2 or 3 exclusives. You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous. And
I get called all the time. People are always like, "Oh, Luetin, you're so cynical, Luetin. You're so cynical." And then it comes out, and it's like, bam! And I'm just like, yeah, there you go. That's what I said. You know, so it's like, you know, you don't want to be miserable, and you don't want to be like, everything sucks, it's awful. But at the same time, you kind of, guys, feet down, please, guys. Feet on the ground. Okay. Now, a game which is a great example of this, and I don't know how, you know, many of you guys out there will be aware of the game, but obviously like Star Citizen, which is shaping up to be a really awesome big game. And I just want to say that, you know, like CIG that have been supporting me, they've given me like ships to showcase and use for that game. And so, you know, I've been looking at it. However, the hype train for Star Citizen is literally gargantuan. It's like a behemoth that's just unstoppable. I mean, that game's funding is like, whatever it is, like $30 million now or something insane. It is the most hyped game as far as I've been able to see, and yet a lot of it is still highly speculative. Now, I do have faith that they're going to pull this one off, mainly because I am in that bubble of hype where I'm just like, it must be amazing because I want it to be true. But nobody knows. It's all totally speculative. They have said, we want to do this. And they have been more open and more sort of communicative than many, many developers. But at the same time, so many people are like, can they do this? Like, they want to create like an entire universe and have it all operating in real time. And it's like, man, this is like never been done on this scale before. is it going to really happen? I think of all games that I could imagine, that one is setting itself up for a massive fall if they don't pull off what they're saying, because they have been telling people very specific details, even with a little sort of, asterisk, like, this may not actually happen. But, they've been pretty much saying to people, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And if they don't deliver, man, there's going to be some sour people, seriously,
Can we actually talk about that? When devs say they're going to do something and then don't as part of the hype.
Yep.
And to bring up an example of this, actually, Mr. Peter Molyneux, who's probably, let's be honest, Peter Molyneux has made a career out of bullshitting about his video games. Like, Fable is gonna be the most epic adventure in the whole wide world. It's gonna just be a life simulator. It's gonna be so real. And then,
simulator.
by the way, we just cut all that bits out, and that's just an RPG with like a few choices in it and stuff. I don't know. To be fair, he might not have said that, but he definitely said things along those lines.
I think he said it in
the Fable games.
He said it in your voice as well, right?
Yeah, he said it in those. But he did say He did say he made massive promises about all the Fable games, and then I would say that none of them delivered. I'm not saying they're bad games because they're not, but none of them delivered on what was expected of them. And recently, he's been working on his new game Godus, which, as far as I know, is just been reviewed as being unconditionally shit for a while now. But he said today that Kickstarter ruined his product of Godus. And you know why? Because he said the pressure of trying to get the money on Kickstarter made him lie about the game's features, so everyone was expecting more than he actually could deliver.
What a load of bollocks, seriously.
What a load of shit. And he was like, I was under so much pressure to get the 100k, to get, like the extra 100k. And he said all this stuff that he couldn't deliver. And he made a bollocks game because everyone was expecting it to be something it wasn't what it said on their tin. And it was meant to be like a Populous reboot or whatever, and it's just like a fucking clicky mobile game that you could spend money on, really.
When people do stuff like that, I swear there should be some illegality issues there. It's like Kickstarter's a weird thing.
Actually, there is actually now on Kickstarter you have to you have to deliver everything that you promise, otherwise Kickstarter can take the money back from you legally.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's good. That's positive, I think.
That happened after this Kickstarter, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think Kickstarter's been winging it for so long. They've just been kind of freestyling, and then they've gone, oh crap, this is actually getting massive now, and there's some full on things coming out of it. I mean, look at Oculus and all the rest of it. There's all these things here, so it's getting very serious now with Kickstarter.
So I wanted to bring up the Yogscast Kickstarter. I don't want to bash Yogscast directly. I've got some good friends in the Yogscast, and the ones that I know are really nice people. I really like them. But the Kickstarter, as you know, they didn't deliver the game. Basically, the game just was kind of cancelled, I believe, after people had put all this money into it. Now that happened before the changes. From what I understand, under the new rules, they would have been held legally liable for that, and had to pay back everything that they made to the individuals who did not get their rewards, which was the game essentially, which they didn't deliver.
Yeah.
So now I understand that there were underlying circumstances to that. They had a dispute with the developer and all this kind of things that made things. I don't know the exact ins and outs of why things happened that way, but under the new rules, it couldn't happen. Basically, well, it could happen, but they would be held liable for it.
But, there has been a lot of pressure, I think, when it comes to these kind of things. And that's where this hype stuff comes in, because it's kind of like a buffer. And this was something else someone said to me on Twitter. Then people were saying, is it just baseless and it's used to cover bad games? So they know for a fact that they've put together a game which is bad, but they're playing a dirty game of, we're going to promote it, hype, hype, hype. And I just want to say, we're not saying that about Phil or Yogscast. I'm just saying that there are some games which will, take this on board. Yeah. And they'll push that sort of kind of smoke screen, if you will, of our game's going to be wonderful and exciting. And, I can think of things like app-based games are particularly guilty of this, or probably also many free-to-play games, which, I'm thinking of the kind of crap you see in your browser sidebar where it's look at how amazing our game does and all these kind of things. Or, okay, my favorite one of all, this is a great example of kind of smoke screen hype, is stuff like Clash of Clans and things like that, where it's all just kind of... Now, a lot of people love that game. I think it's awful, but that's just my personal opinion. But it's kind of I hate these television adverts where it's all pre-rendered 3D crap, right? and it all just is like, it looks like a real world, and then right at the very end of the advert they show like 0.5 of a second of the actual game, and it's like this terrible top-down pixelated thing, which is like about as far away from what they've shown in the advert as you could possibly imagine. And I think that is a classic example of shocking hype, where they're just like, push, look at and it's totally not the product.
In particular is fucking terrible. It's fucking disgusting, actually.
Yeah, it's so misleading. And it's not like, I would be fine with it if they balanced it like 50-50. So like they show like a little bit of a character, and then they cut away and they show like what's happening in the game, and then they cut back and they show this. But no, it's like 99% is just all pre-rendered stuff that you will never see.
I'm pretty sure there's some that are like 100%, and they just at the end shows a phone or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's outrageous. Yeah. It's just, that is the worst example of getting people. And whilst I don't think it fits within the category of standard hype, where you're kind of like, there's a game released on the horizon, because all these games are live. I'm thinking generally of hype as games that are coming up, and then they're sort of promoting it up to get you excited to buy it. Whereas something like that is out already. So what they're doing is, it's just totally misleading. Yeah, it's just totally misleading. But I still classify it as hype, because essentially they're getting you excited about a product to buy, but then when you actually buy it, it's nothing like that, which I think is awful. Minx, do you want to talk to me about post-release embargoes? Do you want to tell people what that is even?
Okay, so game publishers, and I guess in some instances developers, will occasionally, well, not occasionally, will extremely often put a date on when you can release videos, reviews, previews of a retail title. So let's say, for example, let's take Assassin's Creed Unity, because everyone knows that's been a recent example of it.
Mm-hmm.
Assassin's Creed Unity had an embargo date which was set after the game's release date, which meant that you couldn't post videos of it till the game had been out for, I think, like 12 hours or so, I think it was.
Yeah.
Which meant that there was no videos available for it prior to the game being out. So nobody could make a judgment on whether to buy it prior to the release, which I think was a fairly questionable thing to do.
Yeah.
And not all embargoes are like that. Usually embargoes are set like the day or two before, I would say. Sometimes they're set much, like Dragon Age 3, EA was so confident in it, it was like about a week and a half before like you could post videos for it. So
I've had them before where they've been like on the day of release, and I've actually, and I would say that's a clever one, because if you do it on the day of release, it's not post, but it's not in time for people to make a judgment on that game. So it's kind of along the same line there. But Total Biscuit obviously has talked a lot about this issue in the last week or two. Mm-hmm. And I think just off of his own kind of publicity of that issue, I'd be very surprised if any major publishers actually continue to use this practice.
But the Ubisoft just did it again with The Crew, just like literally just now.
This is true, but I'm wondering whether that's part and parcel of kind of things that they had already decided.
That's true. That's true. That is possible. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt for a while, I suppose.
Yeah, because I have a feeling that that's sort of the kind of thing that they would have pre-arranged all their scheduling and all this kind of stuff. But nonetheless, it ties in with our hype thing, because basically what you're doing there is you're getting everybody very excited with all the promo stuff, all the marketing stuff, etc., etc. And very similarly to like the other things that we've been talking about, they are showing you selectively what they want you to see, right? The idea of a YouTuber showing you stuff is that we will show things, and most of the time we'll say, well, I like this and I like this and I like this, but I don't like this and I don't like this and I don't like that. And the thing is so you're not being super negative, but you're not being 100% positive either. You're giving a constructive viewpoint, something that says, I like this, I didn't like this, and then people will make their own decisions off of whether or not they want to do that. If it's post or on the day, nobody has the ability to do that. So all you have to go off of is the company's marketing, which is the hype machine. And I think that's really why I see hype as such a negative thing. And companies themselves do it, but like I've said already, it's this huge thing which encapsulates companies and gamers. It's not going to go away either. But I think really what I wanted to sort of highlight today was people just need to try and remember it. Like I said before, feet on the ground, take a deep breath. It's all going to be okay. Yeah. Seriously, it's like, I had a great one the other day where this guy was saying like, that's right. I made a video where I was talking quite frankly about a game, and he was like, I only trust you and one other YouTuber, Luetin, because everybody else just talks crap and it's all just hyped up over positive stuff. You can't believe what anybody says anymore. And I said, look, dude, I said, you don't even have to listen to me. Just, take a breath and just read around, come to your own decision. And if nothing else, I think what people can take away from this, right, is just wait till a game releases. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Wait for a game to release, then in a week's time, look what people are saying, then choose it. No issue there,
I mean, I don't actually understand the. I guess I do understand, but I don't really know why people do need the game immediately. I don't understand the concept of pre-ordering. It's not something I've done, even before I did this for a living. Pre-ordering stuff was very rare.
Because other people have it, Minx. You gotta have it. You gotta have it.
You gotta have what other people have. You gotta be playing with your friends on day one, because you think you're a fucking scrub or something. Like, oh, you haven't got Grand Theft Auto 4 on launch day, 5 on launch day. You suck.
Get out.
Get out. Fuck off. Imagine if Grand Theft Auto 5 had sucked, by the way. How a disaster would that have been? Oh my god, that would have been astronomical. Anyway, yeah, I guess my concluding thoughts on this subject would be that I feel hype helps in some ways, it negates in others. I don't really understand why a lot of people get so caught up in hype. And I would just say to my advice to people as someone who, I guess, as part of their job, helps generate hype for video games, was keep a head on your shoulders.
Yes.
Wait and see what people say. I mean, very, very quickly, one thing I will say is that even when I do branded stuff, I will be giving my honest opinions of a title. It's just the way I would operate. I don't believe in restrictive contracts. And to be fair, a lot of people will think that we're all like YouTubers and marketing people are paid to to say positive things about the game. I could tell you, while I have seen a very few contracts like that, like passed around within the community, in general, that is not the case. Most publishers want us to give honest opinions, and that is literally something that will just be part and parcel. So there isn't a huge. People may believe there's a huge amount of deception there, but there isn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is some, but there certainly isn't a lot, and I don't. It's certainly not commonplace. And I myself would never sign into one of those contracts.
Yeah, and my concluding thoughts today are pretty much the same thing. I think it kind of, whilst YouTubers and the media and everything can tell you all these things, you've got to make your own decisions. And at the end of the day, if you don't feel confident from what you have seen, and people will say, oh, well, you made me feel confident about it. That's not legitimate, guys. You have to make your own decisions. And so whatever opinions we put forward, now I will say like Minx, everything that I've ever done, I feel is always a truthful opinion. And people know by looking at my videos and the things that I have said, I have no issue with saying that I dislike this or that I think this is going to be bad about things that I've worked with. And it's not to be super negative on purpose. It's because that's what I think. And I think it's constructive and important to do that. But just remember, like I say, keep your feet on the ground and make your own decisions. So tell us, guys, what your thoughts are about hype in the industry. Tell us, has it gotten too much? Do you think it's over the top? Would you like to see it reduced? Do you take any personal actions which, enable your decisions when it comes to buying games? Do you sort of keep away from certain products before they come out to release so it's more enjoyable for you at that time? Yeah.
I smashed my friend's Xbox One because it's for scrubs.
Really?
No.
Oh my god. All right, we'll finish this one up. Drop your comments below, guys, about hype. Thanks for watching MLD and listening to it. If you're listening to it on SoundCloud, we'll see you next time for another. If you have a topic idea, guys, drop it in the comments below as well. And we'll see you next time. Minx, what are you going to say?
One more thing. I'd say that our next episode is going to be our review of the year. So look forward to that. It'll be our thoughts on the successes, failures, and general events of 2014. Let's make it an hour-long special as well.
Yeah, that'd be great stuff. All right, guys, we'll get deep into that one next time. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.
See ya.